Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We are talking about conditions made in a nikah contract. We were discussing the types of conditions which are permissible, and we said that the general rule is that all the conditions are permissible until you have evidence otherwise, and we gave some examples. And we also said that there are two more types of conditions, those conditions which are invalid and also invalidate the nikah contract, and then we have the conditions which are invalid but the nikah contract remains valid. It's just that those conditions don't have to be respected. So let's move on to talking about those conditions which are invalid and also invalidate the nikah contract. And there are three such conditions. The first one is the marriage contract called ash-shighar. And we discussed the hadith on this issue already. And the problem with the shighar is that each of the two wali marries his daughter to the other wali on the condition that there is no mahar given to the woman. And we said that most of the scholars say that this shighar can in fact be correct if the woman is happy and content with the man she's marrying, and the man is of the same social status as her. So she's not marrying somebody who is not befitting to marry her, and also the mahar is stipulated and it is on reasonable terms. Then with these three conditions, many scholars say that the shighar does become valid, and we spoke about this before. But the problem with the shighar done in the haram way is that there is no mahar, and Allah Jalla wa Ala says, وَأُحِلَّ لَكُم مَا وَرَاءَ ذَلِكُمْ أَن تَبْتَغُوا بِأَمْوَالِكُمْ. And all the other women are halal for you to marry, that you should seek marriage with your wealth, so you have to pay the mahar. But with the shighar, what's happening here is that the man is marrying the woman, and what he's giving in return is not the mahar as we know it, meaning his wealth, rather he's giving his own daughter. So he's using his daughter to give the mahar to marry the other man's daughter. And the point is that his daughter is not considered as his wealth, because when you marry, you have to do it using your wealth, and your daughter is not your wealth. So that's the first problem. The second problem is, even when he pays this daughter in return for marrying the other person's daughter, the benefit of his payment does not go to the wife, it goes to the other man. But the mahar, the benefit of it must go to the woman. Allah Jalla wa Ala says, وَآتُوا النِّسَاءَ صَدُقَاتِهِنَّ نِحْلَةً, and give the women their mahar as a gift to them. The third problem is that with this shighar contract, the wali is not proving himself to be trustworthy, because he's using his daughter, who is an amana for him, for his own personal gains, and not necessarily for the benefit of his daughter, which is what he's supposed to be doing. So the danger here is that he will marry his daughter to somebody who is not appropriate, just in order for him to benefit. And so this is him abusing his amana, or his trust. And the fourth problem about shighar is, if the first marriage doesn't work out, so person A's marriage does not work, then person A is going to try to spoil the marriage of person B. Because remember, person A is being married in return for person B to be married, because they've married each other's daughter to each other. So if one marriage does not work out, then this will cause jealousy, and he will try to spoil the other marriage, because he will think, how is it that the other person's gaining and I'm not gaining? The deal was supposed to be that we both gain. And some ulama say that even if the mahar is stipulated between them, still the shighar is not allowed, because it is still possible and the danger still exists that the man is going to abuse his amana, in that he will marry his daughter off to somebody who is not appropriate for her, just so that he can gain by marrying the other person's daughter. So the danger still exists that it will lead to a loss in amana. But the most balanced opinion seems to be that if the three conditions are met, in that the man is marrying this daughter of his to somebody she is pleased with, and this person is of the same social status as her, so somebody who is befitting to marry such a woman, and also an appropriate mahar is given, then there is nothing wrong with this, and nobody is being oppressed in this case. So in theory this sounds okay, but practically speaking, should we open up the door for this type of shighar with the conditions being met, so it's not strictly speaking shighar anymore? Can we open up this door to the general people? Many people don't have the fear of Allah Jalla wa Ala, and this could lead to the wali abusing his amana. So to be on the safe side, we can perfectly understand why a qadi or a hakim might say that if we have a condition in a marriage contract that the wali marries his daughter to another man on the condition that that other man, person B, marries his daughter to person A, then this type of contract is invalid, even if the three conditions are met. And this is just to be on the safe side and to close the door off to any routes which may lead to the wali abusing his amana. And especially if we're living in a time in which not many Muslims have the fear of Allah Jalla wa Ala. So to close off this door would be a wise idea. Although in theory, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with this type of marriage contract if those three conditions are met. And then we have the second type of invalid condition which invalidates the marriage contract, which is the al-mut'ah. And upon this we'll take the next hadith, number 860. وعن سلمة بن الأكوع رضي الله عنه قال رخص رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عام عوطاس في المتعة 3 أيام ثم نهى عنها. رواه Muslim. From Salama ibn al-Akwa, he says that the Prophet gave a permission in the year of Awtas for the mut'ah marriage for 3 days, and then afterwards he forbade it. Number 861. وعن علي رضي الله عنه قال نهى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن المتعة عام خيبر. متفق عليه. From Ali, he says that the Prophet forbade the mut'ah marriage in the year of Khaybar. 862. وعن علي رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم نهى عن متعة النساء وعن أكل الحمر الأهلية يوم خيبر. أخرجه السبعة إلا أبا داود. From Ali, he says that the Prophet forbade the mut'ah marriage and eating the meat of the donkey in the year of Khaybar. The hadith is sahih. 863. وعن ربيع بن السبرة عن أبيه رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إني كنت أذنت لكم في الاستمتاع من النساء وإن الله قد حرم ذلك إلى يوم القيامة فمن كان عنده منهن شيء فليخل سبيلها ولا تأخذوا إذا آتيتموهن شيئا. أخرجه مسلم وأبو داود والنسائي وابن ماجه وأحمد وابن حبان. From the father of Rabi' ibn Sabra, he says that the Prophet said, I had given you permission for the mut'ah marriage, and verily Allah has made it haram up till Yawm al-Qiyamah. So whoever is in a mut'ah contract, then he must let his wife go, and if you have given any mahr to them, then you're not allowed to take anything back. Muslim and others reported it. So all of these narrations are talking about the mut'ah marriage. Mut'ah is translated to a temporary marriage, where you marry someone on the condition that it will last for a specific and stipulated amount of time. So maybe 1 month or 6 months or whatever the stipulated time limit is. The first narration says that the Prophet allowed this in the year of Awtas. After the conquest of Mecca in the 8th year, some of the surrounding tribes decided to fight the Prophet and his army. And from these tribes was Banu Hawazin, and they fought in a place called Awtas. Currently in Saudi Arabia there is no place called Awtas. Its name has been changed, and it has been mentioned that the name has been changed to Al-Buhayta, and Allah Jalla wa Ala knows best. The second narration tells us that the Prophet forbade the mut'ah marriage in the year of Khaybar, and the third narration tells us that 2 things were forbidden in the year of Khaybar. This was the battle of Khaybar when the Prophet defeated the Yahudi tribe in Khaybar. It's mentioned that the donkey meat was made haram, and also the mut'ah marriage was made haram. The conquest of Khaybar was in the 7th year, and the conquest of Mecca was in the 8th year. So from this we find the first narration tells us that the mut'ah was made haram in the 8th year, and the other narration tells us that it was made haram in the 7th year, which is the year of Khaybar. Ibn al-Qayyim says that the narration which talks about mut'ah being haram in the year of Khaybar is a mistake from the narrator. He says that mut'ah was made haram only once, and that was in the year of the conquest of Mecca, the 8th year. And the only thing made haram in the year of Khaybar was the donkey meat. Al-mut'ah comes from at-tamattu', which means to enjoy yourself. And so this contract is merely for sexual enjoyment, and that's it. It is not meant to be a full marriage contract, which is meant to be for life and to raise a family and for a lifetime companionship. It is just simply no different to zina, except you're sugarcoating it with a nikah label. And in a mut'ah contract, the man does not have to spend on the woman, and if he has multiple wives of this sort, he does not have to equally divide the time, and when he divorces the woman, or when this mut'ah contract finishes, she does not have to wait the iddah period, which is 3 menstrual cycles. Rather, it is just 1 menstrual cycle to ensure that she is not pregnant. And on this topic, the aim is for the woman not to get pregnant, because it is just meant to be a short-term relationship. And really this is no different to a zina relationship in essence. And also notice that from these narrations, it is Ali ibn Abi Talib who is narrating that the mut'ah had been made haram. And what's funny is that the Shia say that al-mut'ah is halal, yet one of their leading imams is the one who is narrating that mut'ah is haram. And this is similar to wiping over the khuffain. The Shia don't wipe over the khuffain, they wipe over their feet instead. And one of the people narrating the hadith about wiping over the khuffain was Ali ibn Abi Talib, when he narrated that the traveler wipes over the khuffain for 3 days and nights, and the resident wipes over the khuffain for 1 day and night, and that this is the time limit. And when the Prophet ﷺ spoke about some parts of the ummah making zina halal, in that famous hadith in al-Bukhari, there will be parts of the ummah who will seek to make halal zina, wearing of silk and musical instruments, then this is one of the ways in which people try to make zina halal by calling it mut'ah. So they will sugarcoat it with a nikah label, whereas in fact it is zina. And the ruling on the permissibility of mut'ah is that it is abrogated. It was halal only for a short period of time, for a case of necessity, as the Muslims were on a journey and battling the enemies, but this ruling has been abrogated to being haram up until Yawm al-Qiyamah. So if it is haram up until Yawm al-Qiyamah, nobody can say that it will ever be halal again. And we have a consensus from the scholars of Ahl Sunnah that it is haram and that this nikah contract is batil. And it was made haram in the 8th year, and it was never made halal after that. As clearly you can see in the hadith, he said that Allah has made it haram up till Yawm al-Qiyamah. And in this last narration, the Prophet orders that anyone who is in this contract of mut'ah must let the woman go, because the presence of this contract is like its absence. But if you have given any mahar to her, then because you have had intercourse with her, the mahar must remain with her, because this is a payment for intercourse. And Nawawi says that al-mut'ah was halal before the year of Khaybar, which is the 7th year. Then it was made haram in the year of Khaybar. Then it was made halal in the 8th year for 3 days, as you have seen in the narration. And on this second time of it being made haram, it was made haram forever. And we have just mentioned the opinion of Ibn al-Qayyim. He says that it was never made haram in the year of Khaybar. Rather, it was made haram once in the year of the conquest of Mecca, the 8th year, and it was made haram forever that year. Some of those who want to make the mut'ah halal, they say that it has been made halal in the Quran, where Allah Jalla wa Ala says, فَمَسْتَمْتَعْتُمْ بِهِ مِنْهُنَّ فَآتُوهُنَّ أُجُورَهُنَّ. And as long as you have had enjoyment with them, meaning the mut'ah, then give them their mahar, or their wages, meaning to say the money which you pay. So they say the word mut'ah is used in the form istamta'tum, you have sought enjoyment. But we say that the context of this ayah is in the marriage contract, meaning a proper nikah contract. It is not speaking about a mut'ah contract, because Allah Jalla wa Ala says in Surah An-Nisa, after mentioning the women haram for marriage, وَأُحِلَّ لَكُمْ مَا وَرَاءَ ذَلِكُمْ أَن تَبْتَغُوا بِأَمْوَالِكُمْ مُحْسِنِينَ غير مسافحين فما استمتعتم به منهن فآتوهن أجورهن. And made halal for you are all those women other than these, that you should seek them with your wealth, meaning giving them the mahar, seeking chastity and not being a fornicator with them. So whatever enjoyment you make from them, then give them their due mahar. So this is speaking in a nikah context, not in a mut'ah context, because a mut'ah is more like fornication. And in the ayah, as you have just heard, it says that you are not being a fornicator with them. But they interpret this ayah to mean the mut'ah marriage, because istamta'tum has the same root letters as the mut'ah. But we say, okay, at best this ayah becomes mutashabih, meaning it could take one interpretation or the other. But what about the ahadith then? They are not mutashabih, they are completely muhkam, singular in their interpretation, that mut'ah is haram. why are you ignoring that evidence? And this is the sign that a person has a disease in his heart, that he seeks the mutashabih and extracts ruling from that, and he leaves alone the muhkam evidences. This is an outward sign that in his heart there is a disease. As Allah Jalla wa Ala says, فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ زَيْغٌ فَيَتَّبِعُونَ مَا تَشَابَهَ مِنْهُ ابْتِغَاءَ الْفِتْنَةِ وَابْتِغَاءَ تَأْوِيلِهِ وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ. As for those who have a deviancy in their heart, then they seek after the mutashabih, seeking fitna and seeking to interpret these mutashabih ayat, and nobody knows of their interpretation except Allah. But on this point we have another issue. What if a man marries a woman and he intends to end this marriage off after a limited period of time, but he does not make this as a condition in the marriage contract, so that the woman and her wali think that this will be a normal ongoing marriage? Is this permissible? Some scholars have said yes, this is permissible, and it is not the same as the mut'ah marriage. They say that with a mut'ah marriage, when the time period expires, then this marriage is invalidated and they both separate. And none of the spouse has a choice to go on and continue the marriage. It has to end. This is the whole contract. So as soon as the time expires, they are not halal for each other anymore. This is the mut'ah. But with this situation which we have just mentioned, it is not the case. Because when the time period expires, which the man intended to marry this woman for, he can still go on and continue the marriage, because he did not stipulate that this marriage will end after the specific time period. And also, if he wants to end the marriage, he will have to pronounce a divorce. Whereas with a mut'ah, you don't have to pronounce a divorce. It is automatically dissolved as soon as the time expires. So because of these differences, it is not actually a mut'ah marriage, and hence it is permissible. The other opinion says, even though you have not stipulated a time limit, but you still have the same intention, and your deeds are by intention, therefore this takes the same ruling, essentially, as mut'ah, and hence it is not allowed. And this opinion is understandable, but we can say, combining between the two, that this type of contract, if a man does this, he is performing a haram action, even if we say it is not mut'ah, but he's still performing haram on the basis that he is deceiving the woman and the wali, because they think that this will be a normal marriage, but he has other ideas. Now, if the wali of the woman or the woman were to know his intentions, would they marry him? The answer is no. So this basically means he is deceiving them. And the Prophet said, "Man ghashana falaysa minna." Whoever cheats us, then he is not from us. So cheating and deceiving is a major sin, because you're not following the ways of the Prophet. And even having this intention just to marry for a limited time goes against the spirit of the nikah. Let us just remind ourselves of what the nikah is meant to be. Let us look in Surah Ar-Rum. Allah Jalla wa Ala says, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَّوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. And from his signs is that he has created wives from amongst you, that you may find tranquility in them, and he has put affection and mercy between you. Verily, in this there are signs for people who reflect. So the spirit of the nikah from this ayah is that it is meant to be for life, because nobody wants rest and tranquility for a limited period of time. Rather, you want it for life. So we can say that the nikah is correct, but he is committing a sin, much in the same way if you cheat in a business contract. The business contract is correct, but you are committing a sin on the basis that you are cheating. And this seems to be a balanced opinion. In between the two other opinions, of course, one opinion saying that it is completely halal, and the other opinion saying it is completely invalid, just like a mut'ah contract. Some scholars, especially the Hanabila, they say that another type of condition also invalidates the marriage contract, which is when you make the contract dependent upon a future event. So for example, the wali of the woman says, "I will marry you, my daughter, when we come to the end of the month." So he's hinging this marriage contract upon a future event. Some scholars say you're not allowed to hinge a contract, whether it be a marriage contract or a business contract, upon a future event. Similarly, if we have the wali of the woman saying, "I will marry you, my daughter," on the condition that her mother is happy. So when she becomes happy with this contract, you are married. So again, this is hinging the contract upon a future event. So the famous opinion from the Hanabila is that this type of contract is invalid. So they say rather, first you must ensure that the mother is happy and then you go ahead with the contract. Or for example, first you must ensure that the end of the month arrives and then you go ahead with the contract. But you're not allowed to hinge the contract upon this future event. That the contract will be done when this future event takes place. And some other scholars say no, this is not a valid opinion because there's no evidence to say that this type of contract, be it a nikah contract or a business contract, is invalid. And especially with the scenario where the wali says if the mother of this woman is happy. This is a genuine condition because mother-in-laws are known to get jealous and to try to spoil the marriage of their daughter or son. So this would be an extremely valid condition and it will be for the benefit of the marriage contract. And there doesn't appear to be anything wrong with this type of condition. And then we have the third type of condition which renders the marriage contract as invalid, and this is the tahleel, or the making halal. Let's take the narration on this. Hadith 864. وعن ابن مسعود رضي الله عنه قال لعن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم المحلل والمحلل له. رواه أحمد والنسائي والترمذي وصححه. وفي الباب عن علي أخرجه الأربعة إلا النسائي. From Ibn Mas'ud, he says that the Prophet cursed the muhallil and the al-muhallal lah. This narration is sahih. We know that when a man divorces his wife for the third time, then she cannot be halal for him until she marries another man and consummates marriage with him. Then if that second man, the second husband, divorces her and she becomes separated from him, then and only then is she allowed to marry the first man. However, what if the second man marries this woman who has been divorced 3 times from the first man in order so that she can become halal for the first man? This type of marriage is the marriage of tahleel, to make something halal. In other words, his intention is to make her halal for the first man again. And this type of marriage contract is invalid. So if this condition is stipulated, or if this contract is undergone, then the presence is like its absence because you have directly opposed the prohibition of the Prophet ﷺ. Allah Jalla wa Ala says, الطلاق مرتان فإمساك بمعروف أو تسريح بإحسان. Divorce is twice. Then when you divorce, either you keep her on goodly terms or you let her go on goodly terms. Then he continues, وَلَا يَحِلُّ لَكُمْ أَن تَأْخُذُوا مِمَّا آتَيْتُمُوهُنَّ شَيْئًا إِلَّا أَن يَخَافَا أَلَّا يُقِيمَا حُدُودَ اللَّهِ. And it is not permissible for you to take anything from them, except if both of these spouses fear that they both will not be able to uphold the limits and the laws of Allah. فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا يُقِيمَا حُدُودَ اللَّهِ فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا فِيمَا افْتَدَتْ بِهِ تلك حدود الله فلا تعتدوها ومن يتعد حدود الله فأولئك هم الظالمون. But if you fear that both of these two will not be able to keep the limits of Allah, then there is no sin upon them too if she ransoms herself from him, meaning she gives back the mahar in order to be separated from him. And this is the khula. And the chapter of khula is coming up. And then Allah goes on to say, these are the limits of Allah, so do not transgress them, and whoever transgresses the limits of Allah, then they are the oppressors or the wrongdoers. Then the next ayah continues, فَإِن طَلَّقَهَا فَلَا تَحِلُّ لَهُ مِن بَعْدُ حَتَّى تَنْكِحَ زَوْجًا غَيْرَهُ. Then if he divorces her, meaning fully divorces her for the third time, then she is not halal for him after that until she marries a husband other than him, meaning she must fully marry another man. So what could happen is that you could have Muslims who read this ayah and then they intentionally try to make this woman halal for the first man. And so the second man will come along, he will marry this woman and consummate the marriage and then divorce her, so she becomes halal for the first man. And the Prophet ﷺ said in an authentic hadith reported by Al-Hakim, أَلَا أُخْبِرُكُمْ بِالتَّيْسِ الْمُسْتَعَارِ. Shall I not inform you of the billy goat who is borrowed? قَالُوا بَلَا يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. They said, yes, O Messenger of Allah. And the Prophet replied, هُوَ الْمُحَلِّلِ لَعَنَ اللَّهُ الْمُحَلِّلَ وَالْمُحَلَّلَ لَهُ. He is the muhallil. Allah has cursed the muhallil and the muhallal lah. So the muhallil is the second husband who makes the woman halal for the first husband, and the al-muhallal lah, literally the one for whom it has been made halal, this is the first husband, if he agrees with the second man that he should marry the woman in order to make her halal for him. So both of these type of men are cursed, which means that the tahleel marriage contract is a major sin. What about the woman? Is she cursed? If she knows about it, then she is cursed as well. If she does not know about it, then she is free of all blame. So you can see how the Prophet likens this second husband to a billy goat who has been borrowed, because often they would borrow a billy goat so he can impregnate the female goat. And so this is what's happening in this case here. The second husband is like this borrowed billy goat who's just going to have intercourse with this woman in order to make her halal for the first husband. So look how the Prophet likens this man to an animal. And whenever somebody is likened to an animal, then this is by way of rebuke. And we have examples in the Quran and in the Sunnah. In the Quran, those people who were given responsibility to uphold the Torah and they didn't do it, then Allah likens them to a donkey who simply carries a load of books. The books are useful, but the donkey is not benefiting from it. Likewise with the Torah, it's useful, beneficial, but if you don't uphold it, you're not benefiting anything from it. So you're just like a donkey. Likewise, he likens the person who denies the ayat of Allah as a dog. If you throw stones at him, he will stick his tongue out, and if you don't throw stones at him, he will still stick his tongue out. Likewise, if you call him to guidance, he will not accept, and if you don't call him to guidance, he will still not accept. Similarly, the person who takes back a gift when he gives it to somebody else is like a dog who returns back to his vomit. If a tahleel contract does occur, then does she become halal for the first husband? We say, because this is a haram contract which has happened, its presence is like its absence, so in actual fact, she does not become halal for the first husband. Because the point is that the tahleel is not in fact a valid marriage contract, so it is actually a zina contract. But the ayah in the Quran says, until she marries a man other than him. So this has to be a valid nikah contract. There's a big difference between a valid nikah contract and a zina contract. So if the second husband intends for this marriage contract to be a tahleel, even though he does not stipulate it, but his actions are judged by his intentions, so this is still a haram contract. But what about if the woman or the wali of the woman intend this to be a tahleel contract? Some scholars say that this actually has no effect, because the divorce is not in the hands of the woman nor the wali of the woman. It is in the hands of the second man. Because the point is, even if they both intend this to be a tahleel, but the second husband now has a change of heart and wants to keep the wife and is not going to divorce her, then there's very little that the woman or her wali can do about this, because the divorce is in the hands of the husband, not the wali of the woman, nor the woman. Some other scholars say that their intention, meaning the wali or the woman, their intention does count and has an effect on the tahleel contract, because even though they don't own the divorce, this is in the hand of the husband, but they can still strive to spoil the marriage and force a divorce out of the husband. But we say that if a qadi knows about this, that the woman intended a tahleel and she's striving to spoil this marriage so that she could become halal for the first husband, then he does have the authority to prevent the divorce from taking place, just to teach her a lesson. Now let us move on to talking about those conditions which are invalid, but they do not invalidate the nikah contract. And from these conditions is that the husband says that I will not give you any mahar. So I'll marry you on the condition that you will have no mahar. So many scholars say that this condition is invalid, and even if the woman agrees to this, then she does not have to abide by this condition because its presence is like its absence. So we say that even though the marriage goes ahead, the husband has to give the mahar. The opinion of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah on this issue is that this condition is not only invalid, but it invalidates the nikah contract. And he takes his evidence from the ayah of the Quran, Allah Jalla wa Ala saying in Surah An-Nisa, وَأُحِلَّ لَكُمْ مَا وَرَاءَ ذَلِكُمْ أَن تَبْتَغُوا بِأَمْوَالِكُمْ. And made halal for you are all those women other than these, if you seek them with your wealth. And he also says that the reason why the shighar is made haram is because there is no mahar. And we know that the shighar is an invalid marriage contract. So therefore this condition will also render the marriage contract as invalid. So he says, in a shighar contract, even if the women are being married to an appropriate man and they're happy with him, as long as there is no mahr, then the shighar contract is invalid. And so this is the same thing here. And the opinion of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah on the balance of evidence is the correct one. So these are the two differences of opinion here. One opinion says that the nikah contract is correct, but the condition is invalid. And the other opinion says that both are invalid, the condition and the nikah contract. What about this condition that the man says he will not spend on his wife? Again, this is an invalid condition, because the whole purpose of a nikah contract is that it is obligatory upon the man to spend on his wife. Yes, it could be that the woman is rich and she does not need the husband to spend on her, so if she agrees to this condition, then there is no problem with it. They can get married and the husband does not need to spend on the wife, because the wife is rich herself and the husband might be in straitened circumstances. So if they both agree to this, then we don't see any problem. Another condition he could make is that if he has other wives, he says that I make a condition that I will spend less nights with you than with the other wives. So many scholars say that this is an invalid condition because it is obligatory upon him to spend equally, meaning to spend an equal number of nights with the wives. However, if the wife agrees to this, then they can go ahead with this condition, because we know that Sauda bint Zam'a gave the time which was meant to be for her, she gave this time to Aisha, so it was her right and she gave it up. What about this issue, where one of the two parties makes a condition that they will have a specific time period within which to make a choice whether to continue with the marriage contract or to annul it? So one of them may say that after this marriage contract, I make a condition that I will have a choice of 1 month within which to have the right to annul the marriage contract if I see this to be fit. Some scholars say that this is an invalid condition, but the nikah contract can still go ahead, except we don't respect this condition, so its presence is like its absence. Now we know this sort of condition is valid in a sales contract, so they say that we'll conclude this sale. However, the buyer might stipulate that I have 1 month within which to have a right to annul the contract. So if they agree to this, then this is all valid. But can the same thing be said in a nikah contract? This is the question. Can one of the two parties say that I would like to have, let's say, 1 month within which to decide whether to continue this marriage contract or annul it? It seems the weightier opinion on this issue is that this is a valid condition, because the point is that the woman in this case can have a genuine reason for making this condition. It could be that this man has been known for a bad character, so she just wants to make sure that he is the right person to get married to. So therefore she stipulates for herself a period of, let's say, 1 month within which to have a right to annul the marriage contract if she sees that his character is no good. So for the woman, it is a clear case that she can have this choice. You could counter-argue that before the woman makes the choice to marry him, she should do the research and think about the matter and take advice, make the Salat al-Istikhara, and make the preparations so she does not need to make this condition. However, even though we agree with all of this, she should do that, but it's not always as simple as that. Sometimes you just need to experience this person in order to fully know, especially if you have good reasons for believing that he may be of a bad character, because maybe that's his history. So for the woman, this is clear enough, but what about for the man? Does the man need to make such a condition? Well, some scholars say because the man can easily divorce the wife, why would he need to make this condition in the first place? If he doesn't like the wife, he can simply divorce her. Remember, the divorce is in the hands of the man, not of the woman. However, we say he can still benefit from making this condition because there's a difference between divorcing your wife and annulling the marriage contract. If you were to divorce your wife before consummating the marriage, then you have to give her half of the mahr which was stipulated, or at least some sort of gift. Whereas you do not have to do this if you annul the marriage contract. And also it does not hold true that you divorce the wife, so you don't become known as somebody who divorces his wives. And this is a bad reputation for any man, to be known as somebody who divorces wives. So if you were to annul the marriage contract before consummating it, then you don't have to give her anything. As for if after you consummate the marriage contract, then you have to give the mahr in all cases, whether it is a divorce or an annulment. So the point is about this issue that the Hanbali madhab says that this is an invalid condition for either party to make, and the opinion of Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah is that it is a valid condition to make. From the bridegroom's standpoint of view, if the marriage is consummated and he had made this condition, then he has to give the mahr. However, if he annuls the contract, then this means he has annulled the contract and he has not divorced the wife. So it means that a divorce is not counted against him. So maybe this could be the benefit of making this condition if you were to implement this condition after consummating the marriage with the wife. So even though you do have to give her the mahr because you had intercourse with her, but it will not count against you as a divorce because it is an annulment of the marriage. As for the wife's standpoint of view, then it does not make a difference whether she annuls it before consummation or afterwards. The point is, she benefits from it either way. Because if she did not make this condition, then she would not be able to annul the marriage contract. And we know that the divorce is not under her control. The evidence for the validity of this type of condition is the generality of the hadith al-Muslimuna ala shurutihim, that the Muslims are bound by their conditions, except those conditions which make haram into halal, or the halal into haram. And in this case, none of this is happening. What about this condition? The woman makes a condition that we'll get married, but if you do not bring me the mahr after the passing of, let's say, 1 month, then I have the right to annul the marriage contract. So if they agree to a mahr, let's say, £1,000, and she says, okay, but this £1,000 you need to pay this to me at most after 1 month. So if 1 month passes after the contract and you have not brought me the mahr, then I have the right to annul the contract. So this is the condition which she stipulates. The Hanbali madhab says that this is an invalid condition, but the nikah can go ahead, because it is stipulating the annulment of a contract based on a future event. And they say that this is not permissible, and it resembles the khiyar in the nikah contract, meaning to say that the woman saying that I have a choice of 1 month within which to decide to continue the marriage contract or to annul it. They say that this is similar, because if he does not bring the mahr within 1 month, then the woman can annul the contract. So they say, because the choice in this marriage contract is not valid, so this condition, because it is very similar, is also not valid. But we say the correct opinion is that she can make this condition, and there's nothing to say that she cannot make it. So if he does not bring the mahr within 1 month, then she can annul the marriage contract. However, if within this 1 month he consummates the marriage with her, then come what may, he has to give the mahr because he had intercourse with her. So whether she annuls the marriage contract or not, he has to give the mahr, as long as he consummated the marriage with her. What if the woman makes a condition that I marry you on the condition that you travel with me to another city because I want to visit my family there? This is a valid condition, but what if she says that you should travel with me to a place where it is not permissible for Muslims to travel? Maybe it is a sinful place. So in a case like this condition is invalid. You cannot make a condition for somebody to do something haram. So the condition is invalid, but the nikah contract goes ahead, it is correct, but the condition does not need to be respected. What if she makes a condition that whenever she wants to have intercourse, she will call the husband, but otherwise the husband is not to have intercourse with her? We say this is an invalid condition. It does not need to be respected, although the nikah contract can still go ahead, because you cannot make a condition which goes against the spirit of the nikah contract. Allah Jalla wa Ala has given the man the right to enjoy his wife when he wants to. This is the whole point of the marriage contract, so she cannot make a condition which completely goes against the spirit of the marriage contract. And a condition like this is bound to lead to argumentation, because sooner rather than later the husband would want to have intercourse with her and she will say, no, I don't want to do it. And remember that condition we made, that we will only have intercourse when I call you. And the husband is impatient, he says no, he wants to do it now. So this is going to lead to argumentation, and it really is skating on thin ice. However, note here that in certain cultures where they do marry girls off at a young age, the wali of the girl might make a condition against the husband that he's not allowed to have intercourse with her until she reaches a certain age. This is a valid condition, because it serves the benefit of the girl. And if the man does not want to accept this condition, he does not have to marry this girl. So we say that the invalid conditions are those which include something that is haram or go against the spirit of the nikah contract. So the contract remains sahih, but the conditions don't need to be respected. What about this scenario? A Muslim man marries a woman. Then after the contract, he realizes that this woman is in fact a Christian or a Jew. She is not a Muslim. Does he have the choice to annul the marriage contract? Some scholars say no, he does not have the choice to annul the contract because he should have stipulated that the woman be a Muslimah. However, we say that there are certain conditions which are known by the customs of the people. So if we have a Muslim man who wants to get married and he is a practicing Muslim, then we know it is customary for such a person that he would want to marry a Muslim woman. So this is like an unspoken condition, because the problem is that if you're in a Muslim country, let's say, and then the bridegroom comes and he makes a condition that this woman must be a Muslim woman, how will the wali of the woman feel? He will say, are you suspecting that my daughter is a kafira? The wali of the woman would obviously find this quite offensive. So this is not a condition you go around making in a nikah contract, that your daughter must be a Muslim woman. Rather, this is something agreed upon by the customs of the people, and you don't need to speak it out verbally. So based upon this, if he realizes that she is in fact not a Muslimah, then he does have the right to annul the marriage contract. And if he consummated the marriage with her, then the mahr needs to be given to the woman, and it is taken from the one who deceived this man. So if the wali of the woman deceived the husband, then the wali of the woman needs to pay back the mahr to the husband. What if a man makes a condition that the wife must be a virgin as opposed to a non-virgin, and then he realizes that she is not a virgin? Then he has the right to annul the marriage contract, because his condition was not respected, and this is a valid condition to make. However, some care must be taken, and you don't rush this matter, because it could be that he thinks she is not a virgin, but it is not necessary that it is only through intercourse that her seal is open. It could be open through other means as well. For example, if she's exercising, or if she's jumping, or if she's playing sports, it could still open the seal, so that the man thinks that perhaps she's had intercourse before, whereas in fact she has not. So some care needs to be taken here. Some scholars say that if the man finds a defect with his wife, and he did not stipulate that she should not have this certain type of defect, then he does not have the right to annul the marriage contract. The chapter of defect is coming up, but let's just have a quick word here. So the man enters upon his wife and he finds her to be, let's say, deaf or dumb, somebody can't speak, or blind. Then some of these scholars say that this is not valid grounds to ask for an annulment of this marriage contract, because why did you not stipulate that she should not be deaf or blind? It is only if you stipulated that she should not have these defects would you have the right to annul the marriage contract. But the correct opinion is that he does have the choice to annul the marriage contract on the grounds that his wife is defective, because anything which will hinder the man from appreciating his wife and would put him off his wife is a valid defect, because of which he can ask for an annulment. And also vice versa, going the other way around. If the wife finds something in the man which will put her off, or will interfere in her having children with him, or enjoying intercourse with him, then all of this is a defect from which she can ask for an annulment. What about if a woman is a servant and she becomes free, and she was married previously to another servant? We say in a case like this, she has a choice whether to continue with this marriage contract with the servant male, who is a husband, or to annul the contract. And this is exactly what happened with Barira. And some scholars say that if she was married to a free man and she became free herself, then she does not have the choice to remain with him, because the man is free. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah says that she does have the choice, even if she was married to a free man. So it makes no difference whether she was married to a servant or a free man. If she becomes free, she does have the choice to continue ahead with the marriage or to annul it. And Ibn Taymiyyah says that the reason for her having a choice is because now she is a free woman. Because when she was a servant, her master was in charge of her affairs. But now she is in charge of her affairs. And we might adopt a middle opinion here. We could say that when she got married to this free man, and she herself was happy to marry him, then she does not have a choice to annul the contract. If she was forced to marry this man by her master, then she does have the choice. And this appears to be a balanced opinion on this issue.
Okay, let us take some review questions. So question number 1. We mentioned 3 types of conditions which invalidate the marriage contract. Recall them. Question number 2. Discuss the situation where a man hides the fact that he wants a temporary marriage. In other words, he intends to divorce the wife after a limited period of time, but does not stipulate it in the contract. What is the ruling on such an action? Question number 3. Is a khiyaru shart in a marriage contract allowed? Discuss both sides of the argument. Question number 4. If a servant woman is freed and she was married, does she have the right to separate from her husband? State 3 opinions on this matter.